Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
Hello, and you are very welcome to this week's episode of Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103, and I hope you are safe and well as you tune into the show this week. A little bit later on, we're going to be talking about offshore wind and, well, whether or not we're making any progress in relation to that. And how would you feel about a camp to help you learn about restoring bog land, peatland? We're going to be talking to some people who have that lined up for young adults between the ages of 18 and 30. That's taking place later on this summer, so it might be of interest. But first things first, I am joined by Donal McCormack of Community Gardens Ireland to talk to us about community gardens and all that they entail. Donal, you are very welcome to Let's Go Green.
Thanks, Aisling. Thanks for having me.
Now, Donal, first things first, tell me about Community Gardens Ireland. What exactly is it that the organisation does?
So, Community Gardens Ireland, we're a voluntary organisation where we have members from all over the island of Ireland. And a lot of what we do is that we advocate and encourage more allotments and community gardens wherever they can go effectively on the island of Ireland. So there's about 250 gardens and allotments which are aligned with us. Membership is absolutely free. And as I said, we're a voluntary group. So we try to make sure that there are more of these places that are popping up everywhere.
And actually, you came to my next question there straight off the bat. What's the difference between a community garden and an allotment?
Yeah, so in community gardens, you'd share the work and you'd share the produce. In allotments, you might have a dedicated plot. But the real kind of, I suppose, element for both is that it's community involved with both. We're seeing a lot of community allotments coming on stream where you may have one area where you might grow yourself, and then separately there could be a shared orchard or a shared polytunnel. So I suppose ultimately there is a community element in both. It's just kind of how they're designed at the start.
And is it all about growing food? Or is there, do different communities grow different things because of what they're interested in?
Yeah, so the phrase I use is that these places are sanctuaries for people, for pollinators and for plants. So they're really, really good to bring people together. So, for example, people can go and have a cup of tea and kind of, network and have the means to meet people that they wouldn't normally meet. But I suppose it's while bringing communities together is one aspect to it as well. The places for wider biodiversity to thrive. We see a lot of ponds being developed at community gardens. And we've actually just launched with the National Biodiversity Data Centre a guide for how to make your community garden pollinator friendly. So, as I said, these are sanctuaries ultimately for people, pollinators and for plants.
I should say that guide is really helpful. I picked it up there the other week at the Mary Robinson Climate and Nature Conference. And I love how it just breaks things down into really simple language, because I think we can get very, not necessarily confused, but maybe a little bit overwhelmed in that we're trying to do the right thing. And maybe we're in the garden centre or we're in a friend's garden or whatever it might be. And you go, well, is it biodiversity friendly? Is it pollinator friendly? Is it a native species plant? The language around it can be a little bit overwhelming.
So it can be, and I suppose just credit to the National Biodiversity Data Centre. We worked with them for 3 years on the production of this guide. It is very easy for people to understand. If you go to pollinators.ie/community gardens, it'll just come up there for any of your listeners. But I suppose what we're trying to do is probably kind of educate everyone who's interested in gardening one way or the other on what they can do. Part of the reason why this guide came about was we hold gatherings every year as Community Gardens Ireland. One is online and one is in person. And a couple of years ago at our online gathering, and there was hundreds of people at this, some of the discussions from some of the working groups was about how some of the gardens might use pesticide, while the other gardens mightn't use pesticide. So as a committee, we kind of came together. got in contact with the National Biodiversity Data Centre. They quickly came on board and produced this guide. And I suppose that we're just trying to, as partners of the All Ireland Pollinator Plan, we're trying to I suppose advocate and encourage these spaces to be as pollinator friendly as possible. So yeah, they are. It is easy to understand, and I suppose that's again credited to the team.
And on that, around the use of pesticides, because there will be some people who are adamant that certain issues can only be tackled using chemicals. And I know, as someone who has recently, in the last 12 months, became entirely responsible for a garden and is finding it a little bit overwhelming myself. Are there any rules around community gardens? Like, as in, does every community garden have to be pesticide free, or are any kind of guidelines or regulations around that?
Nothing official other than what we encourage. So
okay.
I suppose that's why we were so keen to produce this guide, because it gives that recommendation for any gardens to I suppose to eliminate where possible. So ultimately, there's no specific rules to say that you can or can't do, but this is best practice. This is where we as a society need to get to. And again, everything from the All Ireland Pollinator Plan, it is setting us up for success for what is going to happen with pollinators and biodiversity in general.
And look, and it is wonderful, I think, this year and this summer in particular, to see so many pollinator-friendly plants around. Like, I've even noticed this year, I saw some ladybugs and I hadn't seen them in many years. I know I'm noticing in my own garden, I seem to have lots of butterflies, and there's definitely lots of bumblebees. So, I'm not saying the problem is solved by any stretch of the imagination, but there does seem to be some level of improvement.
So the more we talk about sustainability, the more we talk about biodiversity, the more we talk about pollinators, the more that we as a society will do. So, for example, my daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, was at camp today. I picked her up and she came home telling me that she saw 3 dragonflies from her camp. And I suppose, I remember as an adult, the first time I saw a dragonfly or recognized a dragonfly, I was in my 20s. So I suppose it's really encouraging that the next generation coming along are, I suppose, have their eyes open and they're keeping an eye out for this type of thing.
And one of the great things I think about community gardens is that you can get involved in an initiative, and yes, it's environmentally friendly, but you get to meet new people and you might want to, I know myself, I would love to have a vegetable plot in my garden, but I don't necessarily have the time to maintain it myself. And life is very busy right now. Whereas perhaps if I found a community garden in my area, I could get involved in that way without the pressure of maintaining it all by myself.
So the spaces are intergenerational as well. So I mentioned my children there. I suppose what we see is that there's people who may be older, people who are younger, people middle-aged, like myself, are just very interested in getting involved with community growing. And there's things that every generation can teach each other. In terms of getting involved with the garden and figuring out what to do, so I ran a project locally within my hometown here, Blessington, County Wicklow, where we gave out a strawberry plant to every single primary school student over a 2.5-3 year period during COVID. And I suppose we kind of did that because it was something that we wanted to make sure that people, when, in the middle of COVID, where people were not having connections, that it was something that they could do at home, at a time when everything was closed, that people could see how it was progressing. But also it kind of connects them to where food comes from. And that's as a society, that is so important for us to maintain that link, to know where food comes from. So I would recommend strawberries, because one of the reasons why I decided to go for them is that they are very hard to kill. So for anyone starting off in their garden, they're really, really easy to grow. And one of the best things about it is they create more strawberry plants. So the front of my house is absolutely full of about 80 or 90 strawberry plants, which have, over the last number of years, grown from a few kind of mother plants. So, as I said, it has the ability of creating a lot more than what you kind of start out with. And then I just give them to, this year, for example, I dropped some down to the local Montessori, about 40 of them, and again, gave them to the kids there. So it's something that is relatively cheap and easy to do, connects you to the earth and connects you to what we all should be doing in terms of knowing where our food comes from, but also it's really good for your mental health as well.
Oh, 100%. And like, I know myself, life can get, like, a lot of my life involves sitting at a computer for long periods of time. And that, you know, can be stressful. Your brain is buzzing, but your body's not necessarily moving and active. So actually getting out and about, and I love, like, getting out and about in the garden and getting my hands dirty. There's nothing better than it. But for people who maybe might feel overwhelmed at the idea of starting alone at home, can they just find a community garden in their locality and maybe ask, can they get involved? Or like, what are the steps that you can follow?
Yeah, so if you go onto our website, cgireland.org, there's a map there. And we have mapped out as many community gardens who've signed up to us as possible. So there could be a community garden in your local area that you could just get in contact, because the contact details are there, and ask how you can get involved. And that's a very simple first step if someone wants to dip their toe in. If they want to set up a community garden in the first place, it can take, depending what pathway you go on, it can take a certain number of years. It can take a certain number of weeks. It depends. Like, you know, you could be very lucky and find land or know that there's land locally. There are examples from local authorities to parish land to private land where someone has put a notification out in the local parish newsletter, and then they were able to find land fairly quickly, get it set up, get a committee together, and then people just kind of came on board. Sometimes it does take a bit longer, but I suppose going back to your first point, we'd recommend have a look at the map, drop into your local community garden and get in contact with them, and then ask them, how does that work for them? Because one of the things we're great as humans at doing is copying what's worked before, copying the examples which are already there. And we have examples throughout Ireland in many, many towns where there are community gardens already established. And maybe some people might have to travel a little bit, but they won't have to go too far. And if you go and drop in, you'll see how it works there. And maybe it'll work in your area, maybe it won't, because what we say is that every garden has its own personality. There could be certain things that work in one area that may not work in another. But I suppose that's the beauty of it as well. It's unique.
Is this, and I know you said that it's multi-generational, but is there, and I don't for a second want to suggest that retired people have nothing better to do and that they don't have busy and fulfilled lives. But is there a benefit to having it as multi-generational so that someone who isn't maybe on a 60-hour working week, or, you know, who has maybe more time, that they can perhaps take the lead? Because I'm guessing like there is a bit of paperwork or a bit of work involved in just getting this up and running.
Yeah, as per any committee, or as per any local community group, there'll have to be some bit of organization, paperwork, that type of thing. I think people shouldn't be put off too much by that, because this is leading to something that's really beneficial for the community. So when you come with that point of view, having to have meetings or set agendas or open a bank account, that type of thing. A lot of people who might be involved with other community groups might be familiar with that process. But we have on our website a resources page to have information about, for example, if you like setting up a constitution for your community garden. There's sample constitutions that are there. There are sample leases if you end up having some private land you're looking to use. So there will inevitably, like with every organization, every community group, be some level of administration. But I suppose that's where we ask people to I suppose stick up your hand a bit and make sure that, I suppose, the place is developed and that you're involved with that as well.
And talk to me then about money and, say, like the local authority. Like, you know, obviously, okay, if you happened to find a plot of land that's free, great, wonderful. But like, is it an expensive pursuit? Are there grants available? How do people fund these things?
There's a lot of different grants, and rather than me naming every single one, I'll point you to the best people to talk to, because that's what people probably want to hear. Every county in Ireland has a public participation network, and they are some of the most amazing people in Ireland who are not recognised for the great work that they do. But they collate and they share out on a regular basis grants that that groups can apply for, and they could be grants from private society, they could be public grants, There's climate action funding that's available as well. So again, I'm not going to go into every single one, but there are grants available at a local authority level, at a national level, that basically, if people are interested in, contact your local PPN, because they will be more than happy to share out the information, and as well as when you can actually apply for them. So there will, for some of the larger gardens or allotments that are looking to be set up, there will be more steps involved because there's more money involved, effectively. But again, the PPN will help guide you on that path.
And your local authority, your county council, they should be able to point you in the right direction in that regard. Is there any, like, do local authorities, do county councils have to provide a community garden, for example?
So, not exactly. What we've seen in the last year, and again, I don't know how much your listeners want to hear me talking about the state of law when it comes to allotments and community gardens. So my role with Community Gardens Ireland is, so I'm co-chairperson, but I've been leading a lot on advocacy and policy changes in the last number of years. So there is a recent change in law where local authorities now have to plan and to have to create a sustainable strategy for people and communities. And what they need to do in that is they need to include a section on reserving land for allotments and community gardens. So that is something that is completed as part of the development plan process. So that's not a regular occurrence at all. But back to your point, local authorities have, since the end of last year, just about 7 months ago or 7.5 months ago, they now have an action to plan for community gardens. They previously had an action for allotments, which was quite weak, and the wording around community gardens is admittedly quite weak. We would like it to be a lot stronger. We would like there to be a duty, a very clear duty, that if a certain number of people request access for an allotment or a community garden, that the local authority must provide it. That's something that's in place in Scotland and Wales and other countries as well. But we're not there yet. But what local authorities have to do is that they need to create that plan. So back to your point, I would strongly suggest getting in contact with the local authority climate action officer, with the local authority biodiversity officer, and just say, we are interested in setting these up. Can you point us in the right direction?
Well, Donald McCormack, you've certainly given us food for thought, and it's wonderful to see so many community groups getting these community gardens up and running. I know when we look at our European neighbours, we're quite far behind, but it is wonderful to see these initiatives at least taking off in Ireland. Your website again for people who might want to check it out and learn more.
www.cgireland.org.
Donald McCormack, co-chair of Community Gardens Ireland, thank you very much for joining us on Let's Go Green. We'll be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103, and we are joined by the climate and science correspondent with the Irish Times, Caroline O'Doherty. Caroline, you are very welcome back to the programme.
Thanks, Aisling.
Caroline, last week we were talking on the show about water usage, and when we talk about energy in general, we tend not to talk all that much about wind and offshore wind, or at least we haven't much in recent times here on the programme. So it seems, considering the location of Ireland, that we do get, a fair bit of wind, that it would be really logical that we'd have a massive offshore wind infrastructure. There are plans afoot, but what kind of progress are we making?
Yeah, we have big plans. We have plans to have, and this is the technical part, 5 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity installed by 2030. What does that mean? Well, at the peak of the usage on a cold, really cold, bad winter's day in Ireland, we might use collectively as a country 6 gigawatts. And that'll be the height of the usage in a day. So obviously, because that comes from we have to produce electricity from different sources, you have to have much more than 6 gigawatts capacity to ensure that there are 6 gigawatts at any one time. And wind is intermittent, wind rises and falls and so on. Solar the same, all of that. But we want to have more than enough. And the aim was to have 5 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity. So enough wind turbines out in the sea to deliver 5 gigawatts of electricity, if they were all blowing at the same time, and we were all functioning at the same time.
And like that, we know, like in recent years, we've seen so many wind farms pop up, particularly across the Midlands, putting them off sea where they're perhaps not in sight of people who might not be a fan. Like there's a lot of positives for it, but sticking a big turbine on the Atlantic Ocean isn't the simplest of things to do. It's quite a complicated process.
That's right, yeah. And, that 5 gigawatt objective, we are not going to meet it. In fact, we're going to have 0 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. And it's not just me saying that, the wind energy companies have been warning about this because they can see the deadline slipping big time for a number of years. And the Minister for Energy, Darragh O'Brien, has actually said it. So he said, well, don't worry, it'll be maybe 2031 or 2032 and we'll have, some gigawatts of offshore wind. But no, we're not meeting the 2030 target in any shape or form. And the difficulty is, you're right. I mean, we did have, since 2004, a very small, very compact little offshore wind farm off the east coast, off the coast of Arklow and County Wicklow. And that, believe it or not, was a world leader at the time. It was the most powerful little wind farm in the world. The Danes got there ahead of us just slightly, but when that went up, that was the most powerful. And then, obviously the technology improved rapidly. So, offshore wind farms started appearing here, there, and everywhere, and other countries. We dropped the ball. We weren't really holding the ball. And that was a private enterprise, a private venture. And the state policy at the time was, to regard this as kind of something of a novelty. We didn't have a planning system for it. It was close enough to shore because it was small to be allowed for under foreshore licenses, but we didn't have a planning system. If you wanted to build something at sea, well, I mean, we have a planning system for building stuff on land, but you either own the land or you have permission from a landowner to build on it. You don't own the sea, you don't own the seabed. Who owns it? Well, kind of we all do. So how do you get permission? We didn't have a planning system. We didn't put a planning system in place until the last few years. And in the meantime, government policy, it's kind of shocking to look back on it, but it was all about, while that little offshore wind farm was being built, the government was building, it was supporting one private one and building 2 more publicly owned peat-powered electricity stations, like peat, really going back to the 1970s kind of thinking. We were granting Shell all the exploration licenses and extraction licenses to start getting gas from the Corrib gas field off County Mayo. We were putting like hundreds of millions into Moneypoint, the coal burning power station, to kind of upgrade it, to actually improve kind of emissions capture, but not greenhouse gas emissions. We were concerned about nitrous oxide and sulfur dioxide, those kind of things. So that was extending that lifespan. And we were also extending the exploration licenses to for oil and gas drilling off the southwest coast, because the Kinsale gas pipeline was in full swing at that time, but it was going to peter out quite soon. So we thought we might have a replacement for that. That didn't pan out. So all very much based on fossil fuels, an old way of thinking. The governments and successive governments weren't thinking about it. So when they gradually, we went through recession then and so on. So when we came to more recent years, and there were companies from the early 2000s that were signaling their interest. They were getting kind of foreshore licenses and they were getting kind of seabed survey licenses to kind of look around. So they were always interested. And when they started making serious moves and said, and because the rest of the world is doing offshore, can we do this? We suddenly had to, sort of really get our act together and get a planning system in place and all of that kind of regulatory framework, if you like. So that's in place now. And we've done things like designated areas for the next phase of offshore wind, which means some of the surveying is done and companies will be allowed to kind of bid for the right to build here and there. That'll be off the south coast of Wexford and Waterford. And then by next year, we're going to have a big map for the entire coastline, picking out the best areas. So all that's good. But it's obviously come way late, because at the moment, we have 5 offshore wind projects in the planning system. We did have 6. One was withdrawn in December last year. And those 5, they've now been in the planning system between 18 months and 2 years. One of them is actually due a decision, sort of a yay or nay, and the third week of September this year. If everything goes according to plan. There is one that's made more progress, I think, than others. There's a back and forward kind of process that goes, you put in your planning application, it's massive, understandably. And Commission Pleanála come back and say, well, there are things there we'd like you to clarify, we want more information on this. And there are groups who will make, and individuals, ordinary members of the public, can make observations, complaints if they want, objections if they want. Most of them have been observations on certain aspects, so they're a little concerned that maybe the impact on this thing hasn't been measured properly, or they'd like more information on that. So the companies are given a chance to reply to that. Those answers then go back out to public consultation, and then more replies are considered, and then a decision is made.
So it's all painfully slow.
It is slow. One of them, which is what's called the Oriole Wind Park, and it's a consortium including ESB, so there's an Irish, element to it, and Park Wind, which is kind of Asian. It just seems to be making that faster progress. It was the first one in by just slightly ahead of others, first to get the planning application in, and it's gone through those extra procedures now, and there's potentially a decision coming in September. I think if that gets permission and it isn't challenged, for example, through the courts or something, that could be the first built. It will be just after 2030. But we might be able to finally say, here's where we should have been. Here's where we are finally, where we should have been in probably 2005 or 2006. So I don't know if that's Back to the Future or what it is. But, finally, maybe we'll be on a path that we probably should have followed, for the last 20 odd years.
We need more diverse, more renewable sources of energy. And if we do say we got this offshore wind farm in the next 6 years, you and I have spoken before about the grid and the difficulties in the grid. Is there an issue with all of a sudden we have this new power source? Like, we already have wind turbines being turned off because the grid... and we're paying these places to turn off because the grid can't cope. Is there any signalling of improvements as far as our national infrastructure is concerned?
Yeah, that has to happen in parallel. So as we're preparing for these, wind farms, offshore wind farms, the grid has to be, improved and built out to match that. And there is a really comprehensive plan in place. It's been in place since 2021. It was kind of a 10-year plan. EirGrid look after the grid. And what is the grid? It's pylons, it's cables, it's, it's high voltage transmitters, it's transformers, it's substations, it's connection points, to major electricity producers. It's all of that. It's the nuts and bolts, essentially. And it needs to be, first of all, we need more of it, because if you build a wind farm in a semi-rural area, there might only be, a couple of stations there. There isn't enough to actually capture and hold the energy and transport it to where it needs to be. There's this huge plan, about 3.5 billion worth of works. It was supposed to be carried out over this decade that we're in at the minute. About 350 projects or more were identified. And again, they would all be kind of, a row of pylons, not too many pylons, but here and there, pylons, including one very big, and controversial pylon project. But underground cables, overground cables, transmission stables, about 350 of them. Now, some of them have been completed. A lot of them are underway. A lot of them are kind of, in the next, there's a phased approach to them. Quite a few now, the deadline has already slipped. You're going past 2030. But again, it's all there. We kind of know it. We know it needs done. And some of those places will be easier to do than not. There's a lot required around Dublin. It's just tricky. Everywhere you go in Dublin, you're going to have to inconvenience something major, divert a road, shut down a road, upset industry, whatever. It is tricky. And in some ways it's easier in the more sparsely populated areas, but then people there too get annoyed, like when they see, lands or, that they don't want to see pylons. We know that there's a huge project, the North-South Interconnector, which is a 140 kilometre, line of pylons, which has been wanted like for nearly 20 years now. And we're still making very slow progress in getting that up because it's just huge opposition to it. People don't want to see a line of pylons marching across the countryside. But again, that plan is there and the government, is backing it. So we're no shortage of really, logical kind of plans. It's just we were so slow in getting around to getting ready for all this.
These plans for offshore wind farms and generation capabilities, like I know you mentioned one that has the ESB involved, like they will be using Irish waters will there be, or do we know, an obligation that power goes to Ireland that we benefit?
Yeah, so what happened was we have these things called RESs and ORESs and all, and they are renewable electricity support schemes. And they're auctions, and they're terribly complicated. And the easiest way of explaining it is it's a state-backed contract for you as an energy company to supply energy to the Irish grid, at a price level that is backed, so that they are essentially commercial operators, and electricity is like anything else. Prices can go up and down, but it means that there's kind of there's a ceiling to it and a floor to it. So if the price on the market falls below that, the state will bump it up, so you're not losing out. If the price on the market goes above it, you pay that back to the state. So it means that there's kind of a consistency. These are kind of 20-year contracts. Now, interestingly, the Oriel one, there are four of the five that are in the planning system I beg your pardon, 3 of the 5 that are in the planning system got these state contracts, and the one that was withdrawn last December also had a state contract. 2 of them didn't, and the interesting one is Oriel doesn't have one. But it has said, we're going ahead. There's plenty, even without that kind of, certainty of a state contract, we know Ireland needs electricity. It'll be off kind of Louth, so Dundalk is a big area for industry and increasingly for high tech industry. There's that cross border element, all of that. They're very confident that there will be plenty of takers for all the electricity they can produce. So that's interesting. That they're not sort of scared off by the fact that they don't have a state contract.
And they seem not to have been scared off by the length of time it's all taken, which is, which has happened in other projects in the past. So that is a positive. So I guess, Caroline, look, as a politician once said, we're not there yet, but there's hope on the horizon.
There is. And, down the line, then we can start looking at the Atlantic, where the ideal is floating offshore wind. So they'll be even further out to shore. Nobody will have to look at them, and they will be chained to the seabed, but they won't have to be drilled into the seabed. It is at the moment, it's very technologically very complicated, but we'll get there too.
Well, Caroline O'Doherty, climate and science correspondent for the Irish Times, as always, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We'll be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103, and we are joined now by Charlie Clark and Lucia Maria Reid from Repeat. Lucia and Charlie, you are most welcome to the programme.
Thanks, Thank you very much, Ashley.
Charlie, I'll start off with you first. Repeat. What exactly is the organisation all about?
So Repeat is a youth-led non-profit collective. We're active across Europe, and our aim is to bridge culture, policy, science and grassroots advocacy for peatlands. We try and educate and activize through immersive experiences, hands-on programs, and community and capacity building. Striving for, a beautiful interconnected world in which all of us are peatland dwellers, and we are supported culturally and ecologically, and we support our peatlands like that, vice versa.
It's really interesting because, it is sometimes when you do this kind of work and you work in media, you wonder how engaged young people are in the issue, and because we don't get to hear from young people all that often. So, Lucia, how did you get involved?
It's actually very close to home for me. I've grown up in just outside Shinrone, Brer and Offaly, and we have a bog, and grown up around Irish bog culture, also in the west of Ireland as well. And so the more I've been exploring this world of resilient food systems and alternative agriculture and regenerative agriculture, and just learning more about my landscapes around us, the more I became really aware on how unique Irish peatlands are and how special they are, and also this really beautiful cultural connection that we have with them as well. And myself and Charlie, we have both studied, and I now work at the Wageningen University in the Netherlands, and it was through that overlap that we got connected with Repeat. And there was a lot of discussion about the fact that Repeat had done a scouting trip to Ireland last year because they were aware of this like really beautiful connection that we have to our peatlands in Ireland, and they wanted to explore the possibility of launching their new program, Peat in Practice, which is all about this connecting with young people on all the different entry points to peatland conservation and restoration. And we were chatting, and I was like, oh, this is actually at home, right across the road from my family farm. Actually, like, so my uncle's bogland is part of the site that you're interested in. And then so from that, it was really beautiful of like, okay, would you guys like to join and help us to organize and co-create the first edition of the Irish PIP Camp?
So, Charlie, that brings us to you. What exactly is this PIP camp? Because when we use the term camp, we tend to think of maybe drama camp, or maybe someone goes to what's the cool camps with the GEA. You know, it tends to be kids and summer holidays, and maybe it's a sad thing that as adults we don't do camps anymore. So what exactly will this look like?
Well, the Peat in Practice camp is a 5-day camp where we invite youths aged 18 to 30, young adults, to get involved and learn about peatland restoration through a medium of different activities. You talk about a drama camp or a cool camp, but also like our peatland camp isn't just hardland restoration strategies. We're going to be delving more into the more dramatic side, the folklore and the mythology behind it, offering artistic workshops for people to get involved in. And you mentioned cool camps there as well, like sports. We're going to be doing wonderful activities in the bog. We're going to be doing bingo or treasure hunts, and allowing people an immersive experience to learn about peatland and get involved through mediums other than science, also art and moving their bodies, and creating a very holistic opportunity for learning.
Lucia, what kind of response have you been getting so far? Because I think traditionally in Ireland, the bog is a place of work and it's a source of fuel and hardship, or at least that's how, you know, my parents would have referred to it as. It wasn't something that they necessarily took pleasure in. Whereas we now have this understanding of the importance of the bog. So I'm curious as to how people have been responding to this, because it's such a unique idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Charlie has said about it being quite holistic is also really important. And I think when we talk about what this program is going to outline, which I'll come back to in a bit, people are getting really excited because the bog has often, there's quite negative associations with it, but there's also this like bit of mystery and also a very deep personal connection to it. And Repeat have often described peatlands and bogs as like bodies of resistance. And it's true, they're difficult because they're resisting, but also because of that, they've survived millennia. And so the response has been really fun, really proactive. And I think that it's also really showing a lot of young Irish people from the Midlands and from around who really want to be more connected to their local communities. And yeah, so it's been cool.
And I know to organise something like this, particularly for the first iteration, getting people on board to support you to do that work, that's vital for this to be successful, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Repeat is a non-profit organisation, and every one of us are volunteers involved in this. And it's really energising to meet people across the world who are really energised and eager in this area. And but we're very grateful that we have funding from the Peatlands Natura Community Engagement Scheme, which is it's in Ireland, operated by the National Parks and Wildlife Service. But most importantly, it's the sites that we are going to be visiting during the week, and they have given us so much of their time and support. And we're really excited that we will be collaborating with Green Restoration Ireland. We're also collaborating with Abbelig's Bog Project and the Clara Heritage Society, and then also different research groups from Trinity College Dublin, and local artists are also being involved. And so it's been this really beautiful, like all island kind of collaboration that's coming in.
It does sound wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Sadly, though, I'm out of the age category because apparently I'm no longer a young adult. So talk to me about who you want to get involved in it.
Yeah, so there's the idea of this camp is that there will be many different entry points to it. So as Charlie said, we're going to, like, day one is very much with Green Restoration Ireland. They specialize in culture, and so that's very much like this kind of like agricultural and biodiversity conservation and like the marginal lands. So that's really interesting for people who really want to get hands-on involved in restoration activities, planting cranberries, looking at the bioeconomy, looking at alternative land use and how we can add value to areas once we do, may say, like with re-wetted lands and raised water table management. Day two with Clara Bog, this is a really beautiful Natura 2000 site. So for those people who are really interested in the applied science, like measuring carbon, methane, doing like vegetation analysis, looking at how the science that we've learned from these restored sites, how much like carbon sequestration is going on, how positive this is for the environment and the biodiversity. We're also then with Abbelig's Bog Project, we're getting very involved in like biodiversity enhancement, invasive species removal. So every day there's like this mixture between science and restoration work and hands-on practical work, as well as learning about our biodiversity and learning also about the artistic ways that people connect with the peatlands, which is really exciting because on the Wednesday night we're going to be having this Irish folklore and storytelling event where we'll be talking about the myths and legends that we have connected to our peatlands and the music that we have connected, and also like people's lived stories and the history, because we have this like deep Irish history, both good and bad and interesting and mythical, connected to these boglands. So that'll be that night. And then we're also then, as the week goes on, we'll be looking at the future. So some citizen science activities. What can we do as people? How can we monitor the data? How can we collect information in order to help restore and preserve? And then also what inspires us for the future. So how can we move forward as young people in Ireland who wish to continue connecting culturally and ecologically and agriculturally and scientifically, whichever angle attracts you to our peatlands. Yeah.
Charlie, as I said there is an age category. You're targeting people who are 18 to 30. But if, you know, anybody listening to this is thinking, I'd really like to get involved, I'd like to attend some of these events, how do people find out more?
If they want to find out more on how to attend stuff with Repeat, well, they can access our website and look online. There's plenty of resources there and plenty of links to other projects going on. And in terms of the peatlands that we're collaborating with Green Restoration Ireland, Abbelig's Bog Project and Clara Heritage Site, they can, if you look on these websites, these places constantly have so many open days and workshops available for people of all ages. So it's just unfortunate for people outside of the age brackets that we're focusing on 18 to 30, but there is an abundance of opportunities out there to get involved in wildlife, not just peatlands, but especially peatland opportunities across Ireland and further abroad. Researching stuff for this project, I'm seeing there is so much work out there and so much potential to get involved that if people want to, all they have to do is look for a little bit and they'll find a way to get involved.
And sometimes the best inventions come from a little bit of outside the box thinking and stubbornness added together. Lucia, this obviously has been a passion project for yourself and Charlie, and the fact that it's taking place so close to where you grew up as well, it must mean a lot to be able to bring this back home.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's been so much fun. My role has really been this like local community coordination, and it's been so much fun collaborating. It's also intergenerationally. So yes, maybe the people attending the camp will be youth, but everybody else who's involved come from all walks of life, and to be learning from people who have been involved in the peatlands for many years, to be learning from them, and also to see the journey it's taken them on these beautiful communities. That's been really, really great. And connecting local farmers, local artists. So we're going to be doing like things like basket weaving and eco printing, and we're looking at like there's a beautiful the Shinrone Guna. So also so many women in my local village were involved in like a dress restoration, and like seeing how all these people have had these different connections to the peatlands around us, and then learning from them and like getting the opportunity to all come together to talk during the week and to share these stories and these insights has been really cool. And it's been, really exciting to find a way home through the peatlands, actually.
Well, I spent many a year, Lucia, singing in the Church of Ireland in Shinrone, and I just, like, my memories of it are of this, like, Hollywood-worthy beauty site. Like, it's just, even just driving down into the village, it's absolutely fabulous. So I wish you both the very best of luck. If listeners want to find out more, they can look up Repeat. You can Google. There are other search engines available. But thank you both for joining us on Let's Go Green.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. Now, just a reminder, if you are interested in participating in Peat in Practice Ireland, it is happening later on this summer, and you can find out more by going to re-peat.earth. So that's re-peat.earth. So re-peat.earth. And you can find out all about Repeat, the work that they're doing around the world, and their upcoming Peat in Practice camp that is taking place in August. And I am very jealous of the participants because it sounds like it's going to be a great week altogether. Also, to go back to our first conversation of this week's show, if you are curious about getting involved in a community garden or an allotment, Community Gardens Ireland is the place to go for more information and for that all-important map. So cgireland.org is the website for the volunteer-led organisation that is Community Gardens Ireland. And if it is something that you're interested in establishing here in the Midlands or elsewhere, and it's off the back of this show, please do let us know. We'd be delighted to talk to you on the show. And that goes for anything else that you might be getting involved in terms of the environment and climate change and minding our planet. Please do let me know. You can get in contact with me directly by email, hello@thecommunicationscoach.ie, or through LinkedIn. You can find me, Aisling O'Rourke, and send me a direct message there. And of course, you can go to midlands103.com and contact me through the station. And of course, midlands103.com is where you will find this and every episode of Let's Go Green. So if you missed anything that we discussed on the show this week or any other week, just search for Let's Go Green with Aisling O'Rourke on your preferred podcast app. I'm afraid that is all we have time for on this week's episode of the show, but I do hope that you enjoyed it. I'm sorry to say, after we recorded our conversation last week about water usage, we're now in a nationwide hose pipe ban. So it is incumbent on me to encourage us all, myself included, to be more mindful with our water usage over the coming weeks as we recover from this period of drought that we have been experiencing. Also wanted to let you know that it's a bank holiday next weekend, so there won't be an episode of Let's Go Green, but we will be back the following Monday evening. I hope you enjoy your bank holiday weekend. I hope you have a great week ahead. And as always, stay tuned to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. Slán go full.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.